Hey out there. I'm running a couple of minutes late, but I'm not too bad considering it's been a busy day today. So it probably makes a lot of sense that it's a couple of minutes late. So nice to see all of your faces out there. Thanks you for joining me this morning. Or, well, I'm saying morning because I know a lot of you are in the US, but of course not all of you. So perhaps it's other times of the day. I'm going to assume that we don't have anyone from Australia because that's probably going to be the middle of your night. So that's probably a little bit too much dedication, I think, to the cause. But I was saying last week that I had a hectic week ahead of me, and I do. It's been fairly busy because today I've officially changed from just plain old Stolen Stitches to Stolen Stitches Limited, which for any of you out there isn't going to actually make any difference whatsoever. It just on the back end, for me, it's a bit like starting up a brand new company. So if anyone has changed from a sole trader to a limited company, you know exactly what I mean. That a lot of companies that you deal with treat it as though you're starting up a new company. So everything is kind of like it's new. Kim, you're getting on well with the Barak. You're enjoying the tutorials. Oh, I'm delighted to hear it. That was the intention with that, with the Barak workshop or the first cardigan workshop, was that if you hadn't done a garment before, or even if you hadn't done a top-down garment, it was done in a thick enough yarn that you could really move through it nice and quickly with enough reasons why you're working on each section as you're going along so that it makes sense, and ideally it also would give you enough information so if you wanted to go and make some modifications or change it for your size, you'd know what you needed to do and also why you needed to do it. There's a couple of things that have started as well this week around here. First is the Laminarus. Last Friday, the third clue came out, and tomorrow I will have the second clue prize raffle. So if you're taking part in the Laminarus, go on to either Facebook or in the Teachable group, and under there is one thread which is specifically for putting up finished photos of that clue. So if you finished clue 2, which was the body, go up and post in either of those places, and the winner is going to get, I'll just do a raffle tomorrow, and the winner will get one of my self-published patterns. But in a few weeks' time, when you've completely finished it, it's really important to get your complete photograph up of the whole thing, because there's a grand prize for that one of a book and a stack of yarn. So yeah, make sure you don't want to miss out on that one if you're getting close to finishing. If you're taking your time and you know you're going to take a few more weeks or another month or two, don't feel any pressure, because it is not a race. And that's really important to remember when you're doing a knit along, because I think it can end up feeling like a little bit of pressure because other people are moving along, or oh, I've posted this. And I'm going to leave you on a little secret. I knit a lot slower probably than most of you do there, and I take a little bit longer. So don't feel under any pressure. The whole purpose of having the knit along and having clues and staged is if you find that you end up running out of steam and you don't get to the end of a finished piece, it's designed to help get a little bit of momentum. If it feels like pressure, just ignore the clues and knit along at your own pace and use the discussion to figure out what you want to do. Last thing I want to do is add another pressure into your life, because knitting should be fun and not a pressure. And the clues and the rest of that is there just to give a little bit of structure and to give everyone something to talk about as you move forward. So I think in general, if it's paced correctly, it adds more than it detracts. And the only time it's a problem is just if you're redoing something or you're running into a problem along the way, I think. I should also tell you all about the Celtic Knits Club. If any of you are members of the Celtic Knits Club for this year, give me a wave out there. The third installment is due to come out in the middle of July. It will again be a couple of days delayed because we're waiting on a little bit of yarn to come from the mill, because of course, like the last time, because there was a delay in the last one, the whole milling process has had a knock-on impact, so they are running a little behind. But I have had the blues arrive today and they're really, really pretty. So the blues should hopefully go out tomorrow, and then it'll be on the week of the 12th, so it could be anything from the 12th to the end of that week, that the remainder will be arriving here. And we'll get all of those out as quickly as possible. So I think I envision overall probably the pattern then being a week delayed. It should have been the 15th, but we'll tag on one extra week to that to make sure that all of the yarn is out before the pattern is released. And there's again a couple of lovely surprises in there that I'm looking forward to sharing with you. What I wanted to talk to you about today and kind of run through is just a few details of the Laminarus sweater, because as we've been going through, a few knitters were running into some problems, particularly with the cables. If you were doing, a part of it is the fact that you've got, I'll turn it around, this is my Laminarus here. I actually feel like she should be a little higher because you can't see it here. I'll just lift it up. Part of the problem here is the fact that there's two lots of cables. So when you start on one left front and you'll have cable B, and then you cable A and cable A. And of course, when you turn around, it's going to reverse. You'll have cable A, cable B, cable B. So that can get a little bit confusing. So one of the tips that I put out was to use two different color cables, one for cable A and one for cable B. So you'll have a visual reminder immediately on which cable you're going to be working. After that, if you're using the actual charts, you'll just follow through each of these charts. The written directions, I had written out cable A written directions fully. Cable B, because it started on a different row, but the instructions were the same, bar the two middle twists. I had said start in this row and work through, but it was causing some confusion. So if that is you and you're following written directions, hop into Teachable, and in the cable overview, I've put a PDF of the full cable B written directions there. And when the full pattern comes out, which should be next week, I will have that all included in that as well. So if you've been following the written and finding it confusing, I've expanded that out a bit to make the whole thing step by step rather than interpreting from the other one. So I think that should probably help you a little bit. Now also, if you haven't done two-row cables like this before, there's a few little hints, and so they'd kind of be running through the Teachable videos as well, that I found quite helpful. The one thing to remember that I used to always, two things to remember, I suppose. If you are encountering those main cable stitches and you're on the wrong side row and you're working it with the cable color, those cable stitches are always going to be purled on the wrong side, because you want to maintain them as stockinette stitch, which would be knit on the right side, purl on the wrong side. If you're encountering those cable stitches either on a right side or on the wrong side with your contrast color, the one that is not the cable color, they will always be slipped, because if you knit them with the contrast color, you're going to end up with a stripe of the wrong color going through the cable. Now, when you're starting off, that is tricky because it's not going to be immediately obvious which is which. But once you get even a couple of rows in, I think that it really, really kind of starts jumping out at you, and you can start reading your cables at that point as you're going through. So those were the two big things that I found made a big difference, is just remembering which color you're on and what the cable's meant to look like on the right and on the wrong side. So those should hopefully help you out. This particular installment, which is a 3, which came out last week. Here, let me turn this down a little bit so that it's not quite so high. That should help. There we go. So I wanted to talk about the shoulder. So this is the shoulder of the garment. And if anyone has done a knit along with me before, you know that I use this type of construction a lot. It is a set-in sleeve, but it's done from the top down, and it uses short rows to do the set-in sleeve. So the way it's worked is you start at the bottom of the underarm, you pick up stitches all the way around, Then you come up to the top section here, there's a set number of stitches, and you start working back and forth until you reach about the underarm. Like, it doesn't go right into the underarm seam, but enough to create all of that curve. So by the time you finish the short rows, it's curved down to here, and then you're ready to start the sleeve down. Now, there's two problems that people can sometimes encounter. One is when you're picking up stitches, if you find that you pick up loosely, it's a very, very good idea to go ahead and use a smaller needle size and to make sure you keep a nice tight tension. So that can sometimes help to even things up. In this particular sweater, I've used German short rows, which I don't use very often but I like to have a little bit of variety, so I decided that German short rows was going to be what I was going to try on this set and sleeves. You have to be very careful when you turn from the right side to the wrong side, because you're going into a purl stitch. Purl stitches are naturally looser, so it's very, very easy to end up with loose stitches along the side here. So the best way of kind of trying to help that is after you turn, you do need to give a very, very good tug on each of them as you're going back. Also, after you've finished, if you do find you've got a couple of extra loose stitches along the side here, which can frequently happen on one side, then what you can do is just come along and tighten up those stitches by pulling out the slack and letting it out over a couple of stitches. I've actually got a video in the website stonestitches.com. If you go into tutorials and just tightening up stitches, there'll be a little video showing you exactly how you can do that. Now, another alternative is it might be the German short row technique that's actually causing you the problem. And in that case, if that's what's happening, what you might try doing is a different method. So my most go-to method for this is, in fact, short rows, but short rows specifically where you don't pick up the wraps. The reason that works is because you've got short rows, every single stitch down here and down here, if you leave the wraps in, it creates what looks like a faux seam going down the side. And it's actually really attractive, because if you leave one wrap in by accident, it looks like a mistake and it looks messy and sloppy. If you've got a whole stack of them, then it suddenly becomes a pattern in its own right. And it looks really well. So if you don't like the German short rows, or you're having difficulty getting it tight without holes on one side, give wrap and turn method, leaving the wraps in, a shot, and you might like the way that works for you. So yeah, that's worth trying. And I have one more thing that I just wanted to show you today. There had been a little bit of discussion about different knitting needles, and I got hold of there's only a couple of sizes, 3.5 and 4 of Prim, PRYM, and these are special ergonomic needles. There's kind of like a little bulb at the end that is meant to hook the stitches more easily, and then the needles are triangular with a small little bit of grip on the side. They do have a nice cord. They've got a steel cord that is, when you open it up, it doesn't kink, and it's very pliable as well. And they're quite reasonable. They're $9.50 for a circular needle. So I've got two sizes with the 80mm cord. So if you want to give them a shot, particularly if you find your hands get tired or if you suffer from arthritis, I've heard some good reports on these. So which is why I got a few in to see if people like them and give them a shot. So you can find them on Stone Stitches. So that is kind of most of what I wanted to share with you today. I'll have a bit more going on next week. On my needles, it's hiding over there, but I'll show you next week because it'll actually be off the needles and it should look good. I was talking about that I was doing Huevos in the coral cotton, and it's turning out really, really nicely. MJax, you missed the live. Oh, it's Judy. That's okay. I'm going to stick it up on. I'm going to stick it up on the grid. I'll just save it in a minute so you'll be able to find it. And I was mainly talking about Laminarus and some of the details of the cables and the set and sleeves and things like that. So thank you all for joining me, and see you all next week.